Grief and loss impact every area of our life, including the way we spend and how we spend money and how we save. So if you are someone who has been dealing with grief or loss, and that loss could have been decades ago, but you still feel that pain, today we're going to be working on an ecotherapy exercise, also known as nature therapy. This offers a way to connect with the environment to foster healing and reflection. A constellation exercise is inspired by family constellation therapy, which uses elements of nature to symbolize and work through aspects of grief and loss. Now, even if you're not around nature right now or have access, you can just imagine and you can just think about the different elements that you might be collecting and what they might look like for an action intentional meditation. So here's a simple yet profound ecotherapy constellation exercise to help you with grief and loss. If you're new here, my name is Michelle Pava. I'm a financial therapist, and that's what we're going to be talking about today and working through is grief and loss. So in a perfect world, you do have access to nature, a quiet outdoor space. It could be a garden, a park, a forest. You get the idea. If not, you're just going to sit in a comfortable position and imagine that you're in a favorite space or even a space that you just imagine that would be the perfect space. So I want you to find a quiet spot, either in reality or in your mind. Choose a peaceful and comfortable place outdoors where you can sit or stand and you won't be disturbed. If you are actually doing this, you might need space to walk around and actually find what you need. Think of it as a grief and loss treasure hunt. You're going to be looking for natural objects like stones and leaves, twigs, flowers, or even pine cones. So I want you to set an intention when you get to that space, whether it's in your mind or if you're actively in that situation. And you're probably going to have to listen to this podcast and then bring it back when you are actually in the exercise. So I want you to just take a moment and center yourself. Maybe close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Set an intention for your exercise, such as to find peace with my loss or to honor the memory of my loved one. And you can use their names. So for me right now, I'm going to be focusing on my friend's daughter who is not coming home. She is in the hospital and they are basically just looking for individuals that will benefit from her organs and she will be giving life to many. So I'm going to be thinking about Ella. So I want you to just get into that space, and my meditation, which I already did this exercise earlier, is to honor Ella. And I want you to gather natural elements once you have set your intention. So this might take a while. So if you're listening to this the second time, this is the time that you're going to stop the podcast and go and find your elements. And this is where you're going to walk around, collect natural objects that catch your eye. Let your intuition guide you and let it guide you to items that feel significant or resonate with your emotions. But I want you to try to at least get a stone, a leaf, a flower, or a twig. Now, in the example that I had, which I actually put on Instagram, I had a daisy, I had a little gray rock, I had a small twig, and I had a maple leaf. So just think about what you're going to collect. And if you're visualizing this only right now, if you don't have access to nature right now, I want you just to imagine what kind of stone, what kind of leaf, what kind of flower, what kind of twig that you might pick up. What does the flower look like? What does the stone look like? Is it a large rock? Is it a small pebble? Is it gray? Is it more brown, quartz? Or is it something that you already have in your home? Do you have a collection of gemstones? So just go to anything that resonates with you. For the leaf, we're going to go with anything also that resonates. And I'm going to now assume that if you've been walking around finding what you needed to find, that you are now back. So first, what I want you to do is both in your mind and in your action, if you're actually doing this, I want you to start to move the stone, the leaf, the flower, the twig, and anything else that you have around as if it is a constellation in the sky. So what I personally did is I had the twig in a horizontal space, and on one end I had the leaf and the flower, as if the leaf and the flower were part of the twig. And at the very bottom, the base, I had the rock. And the stone that I had was gray with a little bit of a white stripe in it. And again, I had a yellow daisy. Actually, I didn't specify that it was a yellow daisy, and a red maple leaf. And it was a very small twig. So I want you to get your flower, your stone, your leaf, your twig. I want all of that to be in some kind of a shape that you put it in. And it could be all spread apart, or it could be all close together. So just get it to where you need it to be, where it feels right for you. And I'm going to let you know what that means, or what it could mean, because it is very fluid what this meaning could be. But it will give you more insight as to how you feel, perhaps. And when you get more insight as to how you feel, you are more connected to your healing. And so what this does is, number one, and we're going to go into more of it, how this nature exercise really resonates with us, is it's going to help us to get connected not only to nature and us out there walking around in nature, which is very healing unto itself, but even if you're visualizing, just visualizing nature usually lowers your stress levels. So I want you to get into that space. And when we start to move the twig, the leaf, the flower, the stone around, it is also very tactile. And I want you to be very aware of what each item feels like. So when I was doing this, I was very aware. Well, at first I wasn't aware, to be honest with you, until I became intentional. When I became intentional and thought about what these items felt like, I was very aware then that the stone was very cool to touch, and that the leaf and the flower were actually very cool to touch, and the twig actually didn't feel warm nor cool. So I want you to start to think about that as well. And actually, I take that back, and I know I'm micro explaining things here, but it's because I'm giving you some time to set things up, either in your mind's eye or actually in front of you. But the flower, not only did it feel a little cool, but it felt, there was a smoothness to it, and there was a strange comfort to it as well. So there was just a different feel there. The leaf felt a little bit more abrasive, even though it was a smooth maple leaf. But I'm going to get into more of why I might have felt these things. So once you have your constellation, meaning you have the shape of how you have everything laid out, I want you just to reflect and engage. And while you're just sitting and looking in your mind's eye, or in actual life, you're looking at what you have just created, I am now going to tell you the representations that you might want to apply to the different items and the symbols. So the stone traditionally will represent the weight or the heaviness of your loss. So just think about that for a moment. The leaf traditionally will symbolize the cycle of life and renewal. The flower represents the beauty or the joy that your loved one brought into your life or brings into your life. The twig symbolizes growth and connection between the past, the present, and the future. So just think about that for a moment. And for some people, they'll need to go back and write that down. I am going to be bringing it up in a bit, but you might want to write this down as well. And if you are in a situation where you can see my show notes or on my blog, you're going to see much more information on it. So in fact, you probably should just go to my blog as well. So thefinanceTherapist.com, go to my blog on this topic. So again, the stone represents the weight or the heaviness that you might feel. The leaf is the life cycle or sometimes renewal. The flower is the beauty of your loved one and also the beauty that they brought into your life or are bringing into your life. And the twig symbolizes connection to them, connection to the past and present, and also the future. It also symbolizes growth. So reflect and engage in the moment. Spend time with the constellation without touching it. Reflect on the meanings you've assigned to each of the objects as well, and consider how each object is now a part of the grief and interconnect it with how you relate to nature and grief. And I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about what I was feeling, but I don't want to sway you too much. So I'm going to give you some of the steps first, and I'm going to go back and tell you about my experience this morning. So I want you to have a dialogue with nature, okay? I want you to speak out loud to the objects if possible, express your feelings, your memories, anything that you wish to say. This can be so powerful, and it's a way to externalize your grief and feel heard by nature. We are nature, and so just saying something out loud is powerful. Those of you who have been quieted in your childhood or in past relationships know exactly what I'm talking about. So if this sounded weird to you to voice it out loud, you probably always were allowed to voice things out loud. You probably never were oppressed. Or you were oppressed and you're feeling awkward about it. But for those of you who have worked on finding your voice, meaning not your voice as an alto soprano, but actually finding your voice and being allowed to express yourself. A lot of people, when they've had trauma, have not been allowed to, as a child, express anything. Everything had to be, they were walking on eggshells around maybe an abusive parent or parents. And so as children, we often learn to be heard, not be heard and just seen, and sometimes not even seen. So not having a voice became our default. And many people don't even realize that they don't have a voice. So being able to be in nature and safely speak out loud to nature, to the objects, is very powerful. And again, I'm going to tell you more about my experience. And then when you're ready, I want you to, and don't do this too quickly, so you might need to stop the podcast and go through your dialogue with nature first. And when you come back, you're going to be ready for closure. So if you're ready for closure, the next thing that you're going to do is thank the natural elements for their role in this exercise. You may choose to leave the objects where they are, or you might want to pile them as a tribute or gather them up and return them to nature as a tribute, as a homage. And I want to go a little bit more into the context of ecotherapy before we go on, because I want you to sit with this a little bit, because people tend to rush through some of these exercises. So in the context of ecotherapy or therapeutic exercise, a constellation, if you think of it in the sky, is a way that we see the stars connecting. We see where there is some kind of a shape or some kind of gathering of some stars. And so we see a constellation as something that belongs together. So the therapeutic approach involving arranging elements, such as even people or objects like in nature, represents parts of a person's family, their family system, or life experiences, or one life experience. So right now we're taking this grief. It's used to explore and resolve emotional issues by visually and spatially representing relationships and dynamics. In ecotherapy, a constellation might involve using natural objects like stones, leaves, twigs, pine cones, or anything to represent a person's life, emotions, or relationships. This exercise allows you to gain more insight and process emotions and explore personal narratives by externalizing and interacting with these representations. So I want to go a little bit more deeply into the key aspects of a constellation exercise, whether it's with people, objects in your home, crayons, whatever it is. But for us right now, it's nature. So representation is a big part of it. Natural objects, or participants even, represent different elements of the person's life or emotional state. So collecting these different items and making sure that they're all very different, yet a part of nature, is part of representation. Now, the spatial arrangement is another very important element. These elements are arranged in a specific way. Often, people find circles or different patterns, and that reflects the relationship or the dynamic or the feeling that you are in the moment. As you recall, when I told you about mine, it was definitely not in a circle. And again, I'm going to go into mine last. And then I want you to think about insight and healing and interaction and reflection. So interaction and reflection, let's just take that. That's how you interact with the arrangement. That's how you reflect on what you're seeing or what each element represents to you and how it might relate to each other. And insight and healing also is about how you get a new perspective or what it's teaching you. Now, if you want, you can take a picture of what you have and you can post it on Instagram and tag me. I'm at The Finance Therapist LLC. And you can also send it to me as well in email or connect on the contact form on my site, thefinancetherapist.com. But again, I would love for you to tag me on Instagram. Again, it is at The Finance Therapist LLC on Instagram. So it's all about new perspectives here, right? Because a new perspective is part of growth and transformation. So constellations are a way to make an abstract or very complex feeling or relationship more tangible and visible. And it facilitates a deeper exploration of your personal issues, your personal struggles. So let me get into what mine looked like again. So mine was the stick with the leaf at the top and the flower right on top of the leaf, as if the stick was a stem, okay? And at the very bottom, I put the stone. So for me, it was about the heaviness. And also, it was the heaviness of feeling what my friend is going through and her family and her other children. And we have a lot of mutual friends. And I have family that knows her very well. And we all are in shock. And so that stone represents the heaviness that we all feel. But for me personally, what I was working through that I noticed is that the stone was connected to, so the stone which was representing the heaviness was connected to that twig. That twig represents connection to the past and future and present. So the twig was connected to the stone. So although there was that heaviness, the twig was right there. And so it meant that although I feel the heaviness and I feel so sad and broken up about Ella and what's happening, that I also saw the future and the present coming out of that heaviness, that I know that she's giving so many other children life, that their families are in similar positions maybe, and they are so grateful. And these are children that will now live to, some of them, adulthood, and Ella will be a part of them. Ella will be living on. And so for me, I'm seeing that twig as that. It could be something very different for you, and I want to make sure that you don't just adopt what I'm saying. I want you to get deeply involved into what you feel. So at the very top of that twig, which was all about, growth and connection, it also to me felt like connection to my friend's family and other friends. I have a friend who actually put together a GoFundMe, so I feel even more connected to her, Tina. I feel so much, it's not, well, obviously respect, but there's a deeper feeling, and I can't quite gather it right now because although normally I'm a little bit more eloquent, I'm in trauma right now, or an indirect trauma. So I have a lot going on emotionally. So my frontal lobe is not going to be on all speeds right now. But there's another feeling that I'm feeling, a reverence maybe for Tina that is bigger than I ever felt before. And so these are things that the twig is representing for me. I'm seeing that. And so I'm also, it kind of goes in a domino effect, right? So for me personally, this is now going into, well, it's not just Tina, it's her family, her husband, and the kind of person Tina is. And the kind of person Tina is the kind of people that are around her. She surrounds herself with really amazing people. So it's now getting deeper. It's layers of gratefulness for all of these individuals. And that is what the twig is symbolizing for me. At the top of that twig is the leaf, and that is life cycle and renewal. Now, for me, this is hard. It's farther away from the stone. I resonated more with the stone. Also, I want you to think about what did you resonate more to and what were you drawn more to? Those are two different things. What you resonated, like I resonated more to the stone, the heaviness. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling the heaviness of that stone. I'm more aware of the tactile feeling of the stone. I was holding the stone quite a bit. You could either look at the items or you could pick them up and hold them as well. And so that was more important for me. But I also was very aware of the importance of the twig. So I resonated more with the stone, but I felt the importance of the twig, if that makes sense to you. You want to try, and sometimes it's the same thing. You could have the importance and the resonance in one area, or the resonating in one area. So the leaf was tough for me because the leaf symbolizes life cycle. And I'm not okay with this. Like, I'm happy. It's giving me a sense of peace that she is going to be giving life to so many children, but sacrificing her life, right? And so I'm having a harder time with the leaf. And when I felt the leaf, it just didn't feel good to me. I just put it down and I tried to not even look at it much. It was sort of on the not, I couldn't help but look at it, but it wasn't where my focal point was. It wasn't where my energy was, my intention. I didn't really want to deal with it as much because I'm not ready for that life cycle and renewal. The flower, so the yellow daisy, I sort of picked up really quickly. There was another type of flower that I was going to pluck, but I decided not to. I plucked this yellow daisy. Now, daisies are my favorite flower, but I like white daisies. Yellow daisies are not my favorite. Usually when they start to bloom, it's the end of summer, going into autumn, and I'm not really keen on that. I want summer to last a little longer. So whenever I see the yellow daisies, there's a little bit of a hesitating, kind of like I take my breath in a little bit, right? It's beautiful, but it's also a reminder. And that's how it was today. So as I'm looking at the yellow daisy, for me, therapeutically, I am realizing, okay, it was interesting that the end is near, right? The end is near. So something that I really want is coming to an end. And here we have Ella, who is passing. And so the flower was tough for me because not only is it one of my favorite flower groups, but it is also, it's beauty and joy, and it's the memories that the loved one brought to you. And out of the entire family, I actually feel like I knew Ella the least amount, but the photos and what I know of her is beautiful. And she was a fun kid, and she is a fun kid. She hasn't passed right yet as of 1:49 on August 15th. So I have memories of her mostly she used to love to put together her own outfits. And, even at 3, 4 years old, 8 years old, she would put together these, outfits. And I have this one memory of she's in a tank top and there's pineapples or something on it, very summery. And she has this giant, maybe it's a play skirt or maybe an Easter skirt, a tulle, big, big skirt, very, spring and loud and fun. And then she's got winter boots on and then a floppy hat. And I think maybe even sunglasses. And it was winter in Pennsylvania. So we're talking snow on the ground, very cold. But there's Ella, living her life and being quirky and unique. And she loved it. And that is the essence of Ella, living for the moment. And so that's what the flower also meant to me, that beauty of what she would bring me right back to. Anything could be going on. And I would see a picture of Ella and boom, I'm right back to the here and now. Like, she is meditation. People work very hard to get to the place where they're in the now. Ella was in the now. Ella was Zen. So the most creative Zen ever. So anyway, I know I'm going on and on, but so that is what it represented for me. And it was hard, though, when I started taking it apart I didn't want to keep it. I wanted to just give it back to nature and release. It was hard to do that. It felt a little sad to do that. And so when you do that, you may cry. And so your journaling and your reflection is all about, like, what are the insights and emotions and thoughts that you've had? I purposefully went a little deeper in what I was explaining so that you knew how deep to go and even go deeper. So the benefits are not only connection to nature and helping you to get grounded and distract you a little bit maybe, but also looking at the broader life that's around you, the broader cycle of life, providing a sense of grounding and continuance. Symbol expression is using natural elements as symbols to allow you to express very complex feelings in a tangible and creative way, and mindfulness and presence. And so the act of engaging with nature mindfully can bring a sense of calm and presence, helping you to alleviate the acute pain of grief. I'm going to be doing this again with other loss that I've had. And again, I would love to know how this has affected you, or even just hearing about it. So if you were visualizing all of this, I want you to take a couple of deep breaths, open your eyes and transition, and just release and let go. And if you were physically doing this, I want you to just do whatever you need to do, whether you're holding these items or you're going to maybe keep the rock and the twig, or however you're going to do things, and just release for a moment. And know that this is very hard work. It doesn't seem like it is. It seems like literally a walk in the park or a walk in the yard, but it's so much more than that. So I know that this was really hard work. I know that this was painful. And if you stayed on this podcast to this point, that means you are in pain and you do need to alleviate some of that pain. So again, you can always reach out to me to show me what you have put together for your constellation, or just reach out and check out my free resources. I'm at thefinancetherapist.com, and I will talk to you soon. And I hope you have a beautiful day.